think we are near the hour, so let's get started. Get the controls of my slides going here. Welcome to our webinar, April 8th, 2021. Things changed irrevocably for water and water rights in Borrego Springs. Well, maybe not irrevocably, but at least for the next 50 years. And the purpose of this webinar is to talk about what changed, why it changed, how it specifically impacts real estate. And for our targeted audience, which is for this particular webinar, Realtors, what does this mean for you when it comes to helping with those buying and selling transactions for real estate here in Borrego? So let me start with a few logistics. If you're just joining us, we'll be taking questions in the chat window in GoToMeeting, this particular forum that we're using. The chat window is that little lasso. In my screen, it's in the upper right corner. If you just find that, click on it and type your questions in there, and I'll be taking the questions from chat and posing them to our panel. So let me get started with some introductions. I'll be asking my panel to introduce themselves. I'll kick it off. My name is Tammy Baker. I'm a director on the Borrego Water District Board. I've been in that position for the last couple years, and I'll provide a brief overview, and I will then be your moderator, posing the questions that you come up with to our panel. Sarah, could you introduce yourself, please?
Morning, everyone. My name is Sarah Foley. I'm a partner at Best & Krieger, and I act as special counsel to the Borrego Water District and was involved in the water rights lawsuit that resulted in the changes that we're discussing today.
Thanks, Sarah. Jeff, who are you?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jeff Poole, General Manager of the Borrego Water District. Let's see, I've been here around 5.5 years now, and I was hired just when this whole process was starting. So it's going to be an interesting trip down memory lane to discuss these issues, but it's very, very important. And thank you to Tammy and everyone else who's here on the line today. Thank you to Tammy for organizing this event. Super, super critical that we all stay on the same page, and for very good reasons. The water situation in Borrego is very unique, so thank you for taking the time today to understand a little bit better about what's going on and how to make your upcoming real estate transactions as smooth as possible. Thanks for being here.
Good.
Cool, thanks, Jeff. Shannon.
Yes, thank you, Tammy. Shannon Smith here, currently serving as the Vice Chair of the Water Master Board and as the rec community or the rec sector member of the 5-member Water Master Board. And as well as many of you know, I'm affiliated with Rams Hill as well in Borrego. And as Jeff noted, it's good to be with familiar faces. Sarah and Jeff and I spent an awful lot of time together in the efforts to get to where we are today, which was solving the water issue in Borrego.
Okay, thank you, Shannon, and we'll be back to the three of you a little bit later. Let me start with the objective of this webinar, what we hope you will take away from it. One is just to give you all sort of just a general overview of what the new rules and regulations are, why they've changed the context for that. Not so that we are asking you in any way to represent them directly, but more so that you can refer your clients to the appropriate authority resource where they can get the information they need to learn more about the buying or the selling the transaction. We hope to, I guess, in the stick side of things, to avoid the bad, but with this information, to keep your net promoter scores up, no dissatisfied clients, no unexpected surprises. And one of the things I want to bring up is something that's unique as a result of this April 8th change, is that there's a way in which buyers can sue sellers, which is unique to us, specifically around real estate. I don't know if that also would apply to whether buyers can sue the realtor of the seller. I don't know about that, but it's important for you at least to understand this new element of a buyer-seller relationship, specifically around notifications, disclosures around real estate. And then finally, I guess the more positive side, the carrot side of it is through this information and the resources that we have and what we can make available, that you just enable, buyers and sellers to get those transactions closed, to get business done. That's just good for everybody. How we're going to go about that, just a quick agenda here is I'll do the overview, the context setting of what caused us to have to change. And which is that we have this plan for how we're going to manage our water, and we have oversight of the plan. And then specifically, and I'm going to have my presenters talk about what in that plan has changed for real estate and for you, the realtors. So big picture in the state, you can think of it as prior to 2014 and after 2014. Before 2014, pumping of groundwater was unregulated. You can think of that as like freeways with no speed limits, and people pumped a lot. People pumped without restriction, and that caused a number of problems like wells drying up, land sinking, subsidence, lawsuits over water rights, and it got to the point where the state stepped in and passed a law to rectify all these problems. The law is called SGMA, and there's two main parts of it that are of interest to us here. One is it identifies the groundwater basins in California and states that they must be managed sustainably. And that really means that we can't pump out more water than Mother Nature puts in. And then for those that aren't in a sustainable state, they need to come up with a plan to get to sustainability by 2040. And then it's nice to have a plan, but if no one pays attention to the plan, it doesn't happen. And so in addition to your plan, there has to be some oversight to make sure the plan is implemented. SGMA touched of the 515 groundwater basins in the state, 94 of them have been impacted as a result of SGMA. In this picture, just zoomed in our part of the state, it's those basins in orange. Those are the ones that are impacted, which really means overdrafted, which is we're pumping out more water than is going in. And you can see Borrego Springs, west of the big Salton Sea, we have those stripes through it. That means we're critically overdrafted, so we're pumping out way more water than we should be. And so as a result of that, Borrego Springs had to come up with this plan and this organization to oversee the plan. And we did that. That's sort of the good news. And there's a couple ways we could have come up with our plan, and we're kind of proud of the path we took. I'll mention that quickly. Unlike some other communities, our community came together, and that's our community. I'm really talking about the big water users, which are the water district, the people, agriculture, the farmers, and recreation, which is golf courses. We all came together and came up with a plan to figure out how we can reduce our water usage, our water pumping by 75% by 2040. And the way to make that plan legitimate is we had to have a friendly lawsuit. I know that sort of sounds like an oxymoron, but friendly lawsuit that put our plan and our plan for oversight before a judge. On this April 8th date of 2021, the judge approved our plan and created our water master. And so that's a background. And because of this path, we use terms like judgment, stipulated judgment, settlement agreement. All those words come from the path that we took, the process that we followed. And they really talk about what we mean by that is our plan, our groundwater management plan. Let me take 1 minute here and talk about the water master. It says it's an arm of a court. Well, what that really means, what that practically means is the water master is really the voice of the judge. So as an example, if you take an issue, if someone takes an issue with what the water master says, like the water master says you cannot drill a well where you want to drill that well. Well, if you want to take issue with that, first of all, what you have to do is you have to get before the court, which is a multi-month process. You have to file a motion, maybe a couple of motions. It takes a couple months. Maybe you need a lawyer to help you with all the legal paperwork to actually get there in front of the judge. And then effectively what you're saying is, Your Honor, Mr. Judge, you said that I'm not allowed to drill this well where I want to drill it. And I object to your decision, and I think you should change that decision just for me. And that might just be a hard sale in front of the judge. And so I guess the takeaway here is the Water Master is a unique organization inside of Borrego Springs. It's not like all the rest of ours. It is the court. It is the judge. Now, it's not an unconstrained organization with powers. The Water Master's job is to implement the plan. And this is the other part of the thing that happened on April 8th is we have our plan. It's our groundwater management plan. This is it. It weighs almost 7 pounds on its edge. It's like almost 4 inches high. It's a big thing. And we're going to take a slice through this right now, specifically targeted on impact to real estate, and then specifically target on what does that mean for you as a realtor representing real estate here in Borrego. And so before we get into that, let me just start with what's business as usual, like what's not changed. Where do these mandated water restrictions, where do they not apply? First is all the Borrego Water District customers. Current customers of the Water District, homes, small businesses, there is no mandate that the customers of the Water District reduce their use of water by any amount, actually. The other group that are not impacted, continue doing what they're doing, are homes, perhaps small businesses that use a de minimis, a small amount of water. That is actually specifically 2 acre-feet of water per year or less. So these are like just homes that are outside the Water District service district, have a well, use it for their own personal use for their family, maybe a small garden type of thing. You know, as long as they stay under this de minimis 2 acre-feet per year amount, no change. They don't need to reduce. They can just keep doing what they're doing. So why are we here? What's different? What's changed? The pumpers, the major pumpers, which is the Water District, the farmers, the golf courses, we all must reduce by 75%. And I know I just told you that the customers of the Water District don't need to reduce, but the Water District does need to reduce. To the extent you're interested in what that means, Jeff can take that in the Q&A section, but specifically from the point of view of being a realtor here, if you're helping someone buy or sell a home in the Borrego area, Borrego Springs, there is no mandated reduction required. There really is no difference than before this April date. Perhaps except that our water rates will go up some, but you know, it may have been inevitable anyway. So back to what changed, and I'm about to turn this over. And this gets to notification and that sort of link to potential lawsuits. And then folks that don't have water rights today, they need to acquire them. And let me turn this over to you, Shannon, to start talking a little bit more about specifically what does this mean?
Thank you, Tammy, and I'll do my best here. Again, you covered an awful lot of ground in that opening discussion, and it all starts here that the rules of engagement did change, and those parcels that did not have water rights that were assigned and created by the judgment that is shown that was made on April 8th, they have to acquire water in order to extract water from land that they may buy. And so the question from a realtor perspective, this is going to begin showing up on, we hope, on your title searches that you pull in Borrego for property sales. The judge recently ordered that the judgment be recorded against the real property impacted by the judgment, which is every parcel in the Borrego Basin. And so in the very near future, you will go and have a title search pulled, and there will be this notice of the judgment at that time. So your buyer is ultimately going to ask the question at some point in time. And so then the question is, if someone wanted to engage in this transaction, they need to be notified, and disclosure would be job one. And if they ask, you can certainly say that water rights are required in order to pump water from property that you acquire that is not listed in the judgment. And so that is sort of the key critical point, is that not every parcel in Borrego has the right to drill and pump on their property, absent an allocation of water rights under the judgment. So you want to go to the next slide, Tammy? Jeff. Maybe Jeff's got the slide. There we go. Great. And so water rights are an element that are governed by the court, and the Water Master Board is the embodiment of the court, an arm of the court, and overseeing water rights in the basin. We will file annual reports, and there's lots of public disclosure around where these are. But the water rights are known as BPA, or baseline production allocation. And that is what we say when we say you must own a water right. And essentially all of the BPA in Borrego that existed as of the date of the judgment has been allocated to the pumpers in the basin at that time. And there's no public market for these transactions, but there are private transactions whereby one person or one property owner may acquire baseline production allocation or water rights from another property owner. And it is this baseline production allocation that is actually what reduces 75% over the next 20 years that Tammy had discussed. The other element that the Water Master is a part of overseeing the judgment, as well as the plan that Tammy showed you the binder of, is that we are required and are involved in new and replacement well permits in the basin of any type. And that has been coordinated with San Diego County as well. And so if you were to acquire a property and want to drill a new well, even if it replaces an existing well, that will require Water Master approval pursuant to the judgment. So that's the thumbnail of Water Master. We meet generally monthly, and we have a staff as well that of technical experts that are engaged in helping us implement the plan. So without drilling too much deeper, Tammy.
Yep, over to Jeff.
Okay. Okay, so, Tammy was mentioning earlier about what's changed and what hasn't changed. Basically the function of the water district remains. BWD is the potable water provider for the Borrego Springs area, and that continues. It's just, and I'm going off script a little bit, sorry about that, Tammy, but it's just, prior to the Water Master being formed, it was partially the district's responsibility in cooperation with the County of San Diego to also be in charge with developing and implementing the groundwater sustainability plan. But following the stipulation, when the Water Master Board was created, that really changed the role of the district. Although yes, we are represented on the on the Water Master Board. Dave Duncan is the chairman, and he represents the district. Even though we are represented, it's really not our sole responsibility and authority that we were going to share with the county originally to manage the basin anymore. But once again, potable water treatment, sewage treatment and collection, all of that remains the same. So what does this really mean for individual lot owners, private transactions for residential or commercial property? It really means, as has been mentioned previously, that owners of lots without meters that are requiring potable water service must purchase water rights, or the BPA that everyone's been talking about, as part of getting that service. Which originally created kind of an interesting situation in which there were no apparent willing sellers of baseline pumping allocation immediately after the stipulation and the judgment was signed last April. So, thank goodness the BWD board stepped up and created a pilot program in which small developments, and those are developments that we've classified as being less than 1 acre-foot of annual demand, and the house typically uses about half an acre-foot. But small developments can purchase baseline pumping allocation, aka water rights, from BWD, and that was really important because I think if anyone knows, it's the group on the call here today, that the real estate interest, mushroomed or spiked dramatically in the last couple of years, and our phone started ringing, and people were really serious about building a house in Borrego Springs, and there was actually a demand for water meters, and so it was really important. And it's really smart planning on behalf of the board to at least continue small developments to continue. So the district is putting up 6 acre-feet of its permanent water supply to be sold to small developments. And we started that program, I should remember the exact date, but it's probably been 4 or 5 months ago at this point. And so we actually have had some activity, and what I wanted to do here was to share the activity that's been occurring to date. So these would be potential applicants that are interested in paying for and acquiring a water meter. So we've received, I think we've sent out 9 applications in total. 6 applications have been received, and the application is fairly comprehensive. It gets into obviously all the property ownership issue, but as well as anticipated water and sewer demands if sewer service is requested. So a fairly comprehensive application that then leads to a customized, detailed project-by-project calculation for anticipated water and sewer demand that then becomes the impetus for calculating all the subsequent rates and charges. So we have this complex, comprehensive application. We've sent out 9, 6 have been returned. And then the district goes through its process of evaluating the application, and we issue what's called a will serve letter, which basically outlines the specific terms and conditions and rates and charges associated with initiating water and or sewer service from the district. So that means 4 applications are still in review. So out of the 6, 2 will serve letters have been issued and agreed upon. One for the Mercy Air helipad up there by the Borrego Health Center up there near Rams Hill. And then another one was for a single family residence. In terms of the Mercy Air helipad, the water demands there were calculated at 0.3 acre feet per year. And then for the single family residence, 0.5, which gets to that 0.8 acre feet total. This mentioned in that next to last bullet point, and then subtracting from the 6 acre feet, that is the total pool of EPA that the district has decided to make available in this initial pilot program. And it will likely continue, but at least for now, the board put up 6 acre feet. So if you subtract the 0.8, there's 5.2 acre feet remaining in the program. Next.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
Oh, cool.
So I have a few key takeaways. Again, if you can remember anything, particularly realtors, the new development must include water rights. And if you need access to a meter, potable water rights, talk to the water district. If you need a well, contact the Borrego Springs water master. Notice that all the property titles will have some form of that notification you saw earlier in the slide deck that any title searches, you're going to see that come up. At least don't want you to be surprised about it. You can explain to your interested party what that means and where it's coming from. And then sellers must disclose restrictions subject to a lawsuit. Sarah, could you jump in here right now and explain a little bit more about what this means and why this, at least an element of this, is unique to Borrego Springs?
Yeah, so this, similar to a seller having to disclose defects as part of its transaction, the judgment requires that sellers of real property, subject to the judgment, which would be any parcel in Borrego that's overlying that basin, is required to notify the purchaser of the existence of this judgment that exists. And it's also required to state that the judgment is binding on the property. So this is it's an obligation on sellers. That's part of the, disclosure process for real estate transfers. And if a seller does not do this, then they could be subject to liability.
Okay, thank you. Contact information, this is who to reach. Again, if you're trying to direct questions to the water master, sort of Jeff Poole's equivalent within the water master is a woman named Samantha Adams. Phone numbers and emails are listed. And at this point, there are no questions in the chat. So I think this is I'm going to give a moment to see if anybody wants to put a question in the chat. but otherwise we're gonna wrap up here. See no questions coming. Let me go to my panel. Panels, or anything that you want to add that hasn't come up that you were hoping to be asked that you want to say right now before we close up our webinar?
Okay, thank you.
Well,
Okay, so I actually
say
do have a message
something.
in the quad. Sorry, Shannon.
Yeah, I saw some questions pop up.
Right, so I have one question here. Are we going to write a disclosure for the real estate agents? The answer is yes. Between the Borrego Water District and the Water Master, we will write like we're thinking one pager type of a high level disclosure of this information, something that you can pass on to your clients with this contact information. So yes. When will it be available? A couple business days, do you think? I mean, Jeff and Shannon, do you think we can pull it together this week and get it out to them on Monday of next week?
Yeah, and yeah, Tammy, we'll take that over as DWD and get the water masters involved at some point. But yeah, we'll take the lead on that to get it done as soon as possible. With BBD.
Okay, so yeah, we'll try to get you a first draft anyway, our pass of what we think works best to you end of this week by Monday of next week. Maybe get some feedback. If there's something that you would like to have us put in it, and then we could do a final version.
You know, I would add just one thing, perhaps in the gratuitous comment category, is that this is good news for Borrego, that the water issue has in fact been solved. So the uncertainty that weighed on Borrego for many decades has been resolved by implementing this plan and completing the judgment. So as a result, you know, we all hope that buyers will be encouraged that every 6 months they're not seeing a negative article in the San Diego paper on the one hand, and that things will transaction quantities and prices will reflect accordingly.
Another question, will this disclosure be on the this document they were promising to write up? Will we put it on the Borrego Web District site? The answer is yes. We will also take this webinar that we've created and publish it on both the Water District and the Water Master's websites. So both of those links to this webinar will be available. And Diane asked the question, this notification will go to anyone buying a house here. So if they already have water service, tell the buyers not to worry. So the notification, the sellers are, I guess, Sarah, maybe you can jump in regarding what the sellers required to notify, what the notification requirements are of sellers, and specifically sellers that have water district service. They're currently a water district customer. Do we still have Sarah? Oh, there we go. Sarah, it looks like you're still muted.
Yeah, I apologize. I lost my.
Uh-oh, I think we might be losing Sarah.
Audio feed. I'm going to turn off my camera and see if that helps.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tammy, can you hear me?
Okay.
You can?
Yes. Did you hear my question?
All right. Sorry. If there was if there was a question for me, please repeat it.
Yes. Okay. So you talked about that sellers are required to notify buyers, potential buyers, of this restrictions of the judgment. Since if the sellers are selling homes that are part of the Borrego Water District service area, what's their and current Borrego Water District customers are not subject to the reductions of water, do they have a requirement to notify sellers? Notify buyers?
Yes. Yes, the requirement
Is that clear?
applies to anyone who owns property in Borrego Springs.
Even if the property is a water district customer.
Yes.
Okay. So I just got to ask that question. Is disclosure required for homes and lots within the water district? Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Again, this is the seller's disclosure.
Correct.
Okay. I think that's it. Chat's gone quiet at the moment. Okay. I want to very much, with much gratitude, thank my panel, because they are the ones that really have this information and the depth and the background and what's happened in Borrego, and have helped me provide this information to you. And so a big thanks to Jeff and to Shannon and to Sarah for all that you've done in helping us pull this together. Stay tuned, all of you listeners, for links on the Borrego website. And if we have your emails, we certainly do for our local realtors. And if we have your emails, we will send out the disclosure one-pager and the links to this recording by Monday of next week. Thank you all, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.